This video will show you how you can run Lambda and ElasticCache in a private subnet within your VPC. So if you're going to use ElasticCache to cache sensitive things like auth tokens or user IDs, you want to make sure that your cache is in a private subnet for maximum security. You definitely don't want to run your Memcache or your Redis instance in a public subnet. So to create a private subnet, let's review my subnets. So in this case, we have one public subnet and we have 5 private subnets. And here are my route tables. So I have 2 route tables for this VPC. There's the main route table. So every VPC has to have one main route table. And if we look at the associations with the route table, the main route table, we have the 5 private subnets are explicitly associated with the main route table. And if we look at our public route table, we have the one public subnet is associated with our public route table. And if we look at the routes in the public route table, we have our default route goes to our internet gateway. So this makes this route, this public subnet public. This internet gateway and this route table and these associations, this is what makes this subnet public. And this route and these associations make this private subnet private. So we have one public subnet and 5 private subnets. And we have our route tables and our associations and our security groups. So the first thing I did is, before I even created the ElasticCache instance, I created a Lambda VPC Redis security group. And the security group looks like this. It has, it basically says we're allowing traffic on this port from this CIDR block. So what this is saying is this range of IPs from this private 1B subnet will have access on this port. And there's another rule, this range of IPs from this private subnet will have access on this port. And these are the outbound rules. So these are the inbound rules. So what this is saying is that there's a security group around Redis that only allows traffic in from our private subnet. So our Redis server, our Memcache, our ElasticCache cluster will be restricted to traffic only from these private subnets. And the next thing I did is I created the ElasticCache instance, and you can see that I specified the security group, this C2BA right here. The ID of that matches this C2BA. So I created the ElasticCache Redis cluster using that security group. And after it was created, I got this primary endpoint. So to test the security, I spun up a couple of EC2 instances, and I put one instance in the private subnet and one instance in the public subnet. And you can test the security. So here is the public EC2 instance, and you can see by the IP address it's a 1.202, which falls in line with our subnet. So here is our range. Everything's a /24, so you can just look, you see 1.202. This is a public server. So if I try to telnet to that Redis instance, this won't work. It will never connect because ElasticCache does not have a public IP. There's no way, we have the security group around ElasticCache that's protecting it. So there's no way something from the outside can get into our ElasticCache instance. So let's stop that. So now if we go over to our server in our private subnet, this guy right here, you can see it's a 3.1.73. So let's try to telnet to our Redis instance there, and you can see that we connected to it, connected to Redis. So we can just quit that. Ooh. So using Telnet to test your connections is a really handy tool. So the next thing I did is I created a Lambda function, and the code for the Lambda function is really simple. We connect to our Redis client. We create a Redis client, we connect to our Redis instance, and as soon as we get the ready event, we respond that says, hey, Redis is ready. And this line of code is extremely important. If you forget to do this, your Lambda function will never actually finish. It will just basically time out. So you need to make sure that this line is in here so your Lambda function can actually finish and you can actually use your Lambda and Redis instance together. So once I got that done, once I finished this code, I just I'm using serverless to manage my Lambda functions. So executing this line will actually deploy this Lambda function, into Lambda. So it's deployed to the cloud. So if we go to our Lambda function, we can see that it is running in our VPC. The Lambda function is running in the private instance 1B and 1C, and it's using the default Lambda security group. So Redis is running in these two private subnets. Our Lambda function is running in these two private subnets. Nothing from the external internet can access this stuff. And if we run test, and that works. So we get our Redis is ready. And here's the framework that I'm using to deploy Lambda functions. I'm using serverless. And here is the Lambda policy, the Lambda role, all of the policies and permissions that are attached to the Lambda role. I'm using the Amazon ElasticCache full access policy and the Lambda VPC access execution role. I'm assigning these policies to the Lambda function, to this role. So our Lambda function has access to ElasticCache. And so since our ElasticCache instance is private, you won't be able to connect to it from your developer computer. So you'll have to run your own local copy of Redis on your server, on your computer. And it's really easy to install Redis. All you do is simply brew install Redis, and you launch it. And in less than 30 seconds, you can have your own copy of Redis running on your box. So the idea is you do your local development with your own local Redis server running. And when you push to your dev environment or your production environment, those environments will use Redis from ElasticCache. And here is our subnet group. Let's go back to Redis. Here's what our subnet groups look like for Redis. So when you create a Redis instance, it creates a subnet group, and you just assign the subnets that you want in your group. And unfortunately, it's not easy to remove something that's already in use. So changing this stuff is a little bit difficult. So you want to make sure that you get this stuff right, or you just have to delete your ElasticCache instance. So it's not the end of the world, but changing this stuff isn't exactly as smooth as it could be. And so that's it.